Hello everyone, if you are new to my channel, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. Either way, you are most welcome. So my name is Andrew, and today I've decided to do a bit of a mixed bag video. Originally I was going to do a very boring video about causation versus correlation. A lot of people get those two mixed up, and it would basically lead into the next series I was doing, which is all about veganism. It's a very boring thing to do. I don't want to film it, and I can add it in 30 seconds in the vegan series. So I'm going to do that instead of making a 5-minute video about it. So instead I'm going to do a mixed bag about things that have been happening in the world, mostly news that I've seen recently that I think are important or should be talked about. I will say that this video is cursed at this point. This is the 6th attempt to film this video. I have had everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in trying to film the video, in equipment not working properly, in random people calling me, in random people that I don't even know knocking on my door. Even now there's a damn fly that does not want to leave me alone. So this video might be cursed. But I'm gonna push through, and I'm gonna get this done and edited, and so it can be released tomorrow. So first off, here in Canada, the Emergencies Act hearing has continued. Recently, the lawyer for the Canadian government came on the stand and testified and told us absolutely nothing, or almost absolutely nothing. I think he did tell us, I think if you read between the lines, he kind of said some very interesting things, but for the most part, he enacted client-attorney privilege for most of his testimony. The important part, I think, was when they asked him about the reasons the Trudeau government enacted the Emergencies Act in the first place. He said they looked at a significant number of reasons, and they looked through a very wide scope. And when pressed as to what those reasons were, he said he could not tell the inquiry. Again, enacting client-attorney privilege, which isn't very helpful, obviously. But when pressed, he did say that they were beneficial to the Canadian people. Okay, why don't you tell us what those were, and then we can decide if they were beneficial to the Canadian people or not. Are Canadians too stupid not to be able to determine that for themselves? I get that client-attorney privilege is important. I will point out that if I went to a trial, I understand that a hearing and a trial are different things, but let's say I went to a trial and I had done whatever, and I said, oh, well, I did this, but I had very good reasons for it. And the judge said, what were the reasons? And I said, well, I can't tell you what they were, but they were beneficial for everyone. The judge would just laugh, and I either would have to tell him or I would be in contempt of court. But hey, I'm just a random, person. This is the government we're talking about. They play by different rules. So I mean, it is kind of telling, though, and I think we can take a couple things away from this. Now, I know Trudeau has testified a little bit. I've kind of had a media blackout for the majority of this week. I've seen bits of it here and there, just when I've been, I've come across it randomly, essentially. So I know Trudeau has started to testify. I don't know if his testifying is done yet or not. I hope they do ask him about this, though, when he testifies. He probably won't answer it either, and I think I kind of, reading between the lines, I kind of understand why. So basically, the lawyer to the Canadian government has said, in a nutshell, there were good reasons for enacting the Emergencies Act, and they were beneficial to Canadians, but we won't tell you what those reasons were. Okay. So If they were good reasons that were beneficial to the Canadian people, Trudeau would be shouting them from the rooftops, because this has been another mark on him as a prime minister and on his Liberal Party. This is just giving more and more ammo to the Conservatives, and he wants this done so he can move on from it. So if he had a good reason that benefited Canadians, he would be telling us about it. He would have at that point. His whole "they were dangerous" thing has kind of fallen apart on him. So apparently there are other reasons, but we don't deserve to know what they are. Or we don't know them yet. I don't know. I made a video last week talking about the Freedom Convoy and the actions that the government took, and how they, the government and the police took, and how they basically decreased freedom of speech in Canada. It was part of my Freedom of Speech series. If you haven't seen that, feel free to go back and watch it. I would love to get more views. Shameless plug. So in that video, I explained that there were protests about lockdown measures and the emergency measures in most countries around the world at that point. Those countries and the media in those countries were not showing it. So it was only the Canadian protests, the trucker, the Freedom Convoy, the trucker protests that made significant news across the world, and that convoy was emboldening other people in other countries to do more, to try and gain their rights back as well. So I know, for instance, that there was a call between some American diplomat on trade or something, and the equivalent to the Canadian, and she mentioned in an article recently that, like, she got this call and she had to call him back immediately, and like there was like, we just had to deal with this, and she was basically told, you better fix this now or else. I have a feeling they got many calls about like that, or similar to that, from many countries, many diplomats, and many world leaders. And I have a feeling that's what kind of pushed Trudeau in the end. I don't know, obviously, that's all speculation. There's no real evidence for it. There may never be. But I have a feeling that's why they're not telling you what the reasons are. Because like I said, if they had a good reason, they would say it. Because it's a good reason. And then they could actually gain something from this whole debacle that has been this Emergencies Act. So I have a feeling that's what that is. So what else has happened recently? So an asteroid just came down in southern Ontario recently. It didn't really hit. It broke up in the air. A couple portions of the asteroid meteorites at that point did hit down. There's a search right now for those. Meteorites are very, very valuable, both in the scientific sector and the private sector. There are a lot of private collectors that like to collect asteroids, and they can be worth a significant amount of money based on their composition, density, weight, and size. Just excuse me, my cat just wants to get in. I have the door closed for recording. Hey buddy, come on in if you want to come in. He'll probably just stand at the door like, yeah, and you're not allowed to keep this closed. I don't know why cats have a problem with closed doors, but they do. So anyway, now that he's in, I can put it to at least. Anyway, so, and also they like it they like to study it. Scientists like to study them just to see what they can find and see if there's any new information that they can gather about our universe from them. The important thing about this is that there was only a 2-hour notice that this was even going to happen. NASA predicted, there you go, you can see my cat in the background there, that's Shadow if you're new to this channel. So NASA predicted the path of this asteroid 2 hours before it happened. So that's the warning we would have had. Now, is 2 hours enough to evacuate an entire city if this asteroid was bigger? Probably not. Or even if it was even bigger, part of a province or part of a country? Probably not. And so we don't realize here on Earth how vulnerable we are. Most of the asteroids that we notice within a day of impact, if we're lucky. Most of them actually we notice, a vast majority of them we notice only after they've passed us, which is way too late. So we need to start working on a new way of identifying asteroids. Right now, the only way you see an asteroid before it hits the Earth is if you're, so you've got to, what a lot of the satellites do, is they aim for a portion of the sky, and they'll look at the differences. They'll take a picture every a certain amount of time for a night. And then they'll do that the next night and the next night. And then using computers and using people, they'll go over those and see if there are any differences in the sky. That is, so basically the only way you would notice an asteroid in one of those pictures, because asteroids are big dark clumps of rock and minerals, and they very rarely reflect much light, is if it blocked out one of the stars in the sky, and you notice that. So it's very hard to notice them ahead of time. So I mean, we need to figure out a better way here. I don't know what that way would be. Some people think it already exists, they're just not telling us. I don't know. Obviously, who knows? But again, I made a video all about my asteroid conspiracy theory and gave a couple options. This, yet again, has made a lot of news. Next, Mauna Loa. Mauna Loa just erupted again. First time in 40 years. Mauna Loa is a volcano in Hawaii, if you didn't know. And it's considered the most active volcano in the world. And it erupted, so there's an ash warning right now for certain parts of Hawaii, and it kind of talks about this kind of brings point to the hubris of people in a way. So when we basically all had to grow our own food to survive, it makes sense that people would build cities at the base of volcanoes, because volcanic ash is very nutrient rich and it's great for growing crops in. It will give you better yield for your crops. That being said, then people were shocked and dismayed when all of a sudden their floor was lava. And this has happened all through history. This has happened, like, there are so many examples. And it's not just volcanoes, by the way. It's like, it's convenient to have a location on the ocean, or a waterways path to get to the ocean, but then when a hurricane gets you, or when a tsunami comes, you're like, golly gee, how could this happen to me? Sure. The best example of this is the nuclear reactor that the US built right in the dead center of a fault line in California. Good job. I can't wait for that earthquake to happen. People are super. I don't get it. I don't know. I don't know at this point. People are people. I think that's all I have to say there. Last, I know this is a little bit older, but there's been a little bit of an update to this story, so I'm going to talk about it again, or I'm going to talk about it. The missile that hit Poland. I kind of watched real time when this was happening. I just lucked out that I was kind of watching the news. I was kind of going through the news online, and all of a sudden this was everywhere. It's tragic that this happened. At the same time, shit happens in war. unfortunately. They're being very, very careful right now about their wording of whose fault it is. Partially because if they word it wrongly, theoretically, we will start World War III. So right now they're saying that the missile was Russian made. Now, does that mean that the Russians shot it off and they're the ones at fault? Technically, no. I mean, Ukraine could have purchased Russian-made missiles. Who knows? I don't necessarily like the stance in America that Biden had when he said, "Oh, it's Russia's fault no matter what," because they're the one invading they're the one invading Ukraine right now. Okay, technically he's right, but at the same time, it's not that black and white. To be fair, I appreciate that immediately, and I understand why too. Immediately, Russia like contacted the world and was like, "Oh my God, we're so sorry, and if we don't think we did it, but if we did, we're so sorry." That's essentially what they said. So they kind of understand the just how bad this could have gotten. Either way, I think it was an accident. It's a horrible accident, but hopefully it doesn't draw the world into war. If you don't know, Poland is a NATO country. It's part of NATO. It has been for, I think, right around 20 years at this point. And NATO was obviously built to counteract the Soviet Union, the USSR. And basically there's a treaty that can be enacted that if a country of NATO, if someone declares war on a country that's within NATO, then you're declaring war on every country that's in NATO, essentially. And unfortunately, dropping missiles on another country could be an act of war against that country. I think either way, like I said, it's an accident. I think maybe something can be done by the country that actually, when they determine who actually shot it, if they can determine that, I think things can be done by that country to maybe compensate the people that were well, I know 2 people were killed from the accident, so maybe compensate their families. I know compensation really doesn't bring them back, but you know, it can help a little bit. So maybe they can do that, and hopefully we don't start World War III. I would like to not start World War III at this point, although I think with things happening, World War III might eventually be inevitable. But there you go. That's just my opinion. Yeah, if you liked what you saw today, hit the like button. You're welcome for not boring you with causation versus correlation. And if you want, hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment about any of these things that I talked about today. And I hope you have a good day, a good week, whenever you see the next of my videos. Until then, see ya.